Hello and welcome back to the Empowered Self podcast. I'm your host, Krista Long, and today's guest is someone whose journey beautifully bridges the human and the high tech. I'm joined by Marie-Louise Marshall, an inspiring leader, coach, and speaker who left behind a high-powered career in the corporate world to help people reconnect with their humanness in an increasingly digital workplace. With a background in banking and pharmaceuticals, including her most recent role as a Deputy Director for Digital Transformation at Servier's Industry Division. Marie-Louise knows what it's like to live at the cutting edge of industry. But in 2023, she took a courageous leap and founded the HUME, a leadership and organisation development enterprise, centred on one beautiful truth: we lead best when we lead as fully human. In today's conversation, we talk about identity shifts, self-trust, and what it means to lead in a world that's changing faster than ever. Marie-Louise shares her journey from the corporate boardroom to entrepreneurship and how she's now helping others become more self-aware, empowered, and future-ready. Her tagline is being human in the digital world, and I couldn't think of a more timely message. So let's dive in. Marie-Louise, you're very welcome. It's such a joy to have you here. How are you arriving today?
Well, first, I'm arriving excited because I'm really thrilled to be talking to you today, Krista. I really admire you. We know each other back a little bit, so I've always enjoyed what you're doing. So, yeah, I'm delighted you've asked me to be with you today. I'm feeling really good, actually.
Oh, that's wonderful here, and I'm delighted to have you here as well and to reconnect again. So, Marie-Louise, you've had a powerful career journey from the early days of IT in banking to leadership roles in pharma. What sparked your decision to step away from all of that and to launch Who Me? And what was going on internally for you as you prepared to make that leap, where so many people fantasize about leaving the corporate world but feel stuck? What gave you the courage?
Well, it's funny. I kind of would always have said I was a bit of an accidental tourist in my career. I came up in a time where you put your head down and you got on with it. You went to work because work provided you with the means to be whatever you needed to be or to support your life. So when I started in the workplace, I was very young, very little qualifications, and I got to where I got to through curiosity and energy and interest in what was going on. So as I sort of said, I never had a career plan. Nobody said to me, I'm going to work in computers. If they'd said that to me in the late 70s, nobody knew what computers were anyway. So it would have been very strange. So I kind of think a lot of things happened by accident rather than by design. And also through my own curiosity. I left school when I was about 15 and a half, 16, not many qualifications, not much academic behind me. And I was fortunate enough to get opportunities of people who mentored me on the way, who saw in me an interest and an ability to absorb stuff and not be too rigid. So when I started, for example, in AIB, when I worked back in banking, and they were only setting up the computer department, there weren't really job titles. We were still bank officials, but we were expected to behave differently and be different to bank officials in the bank. And I had that kind of energy that I didn't need very tight boundaries to keep me. Like tight boundaries used to annoy me a little bit. I kind of go, well, I know everything here now. Now what am I supposed to do? I'm the kind of person who goes, oh, what's happening over there? I wonder what's going on. And it's interesting. Let's take it apart and see what it's made of. And so I've had that kind of curiosity and a sort of way that um, when I see things are working, I'm interested to know what next. So I've always had that move on, progress kind of attitude. And then leaving banking and going into pharma, starting with a very small pharma company, that I was the 35th staff member. And it grew over the years I was there. So I was 26 years in pharma. It grew and grew. So when I left the site in Arklow, there were 500 staff. So that's an enormous growth. And I was part of the team that helped that growth, the senior leadership team. When I got promoted to head office, I again was getting an opportunity to do something new, interesting. I was on that. I've done IT now, so what next? And the what next was the digital transformation. But very quickly, when I was seeing the digital transformation, a thing that was I was recognizing again was I was in the banking back in the early 90s when ATMs, late 80s when ATMs came in, when online banking came in, when the bank reduced staff because it brought in the machines, it redeployed staff. So a big narrative change happened. But back in that time when we did this sort of online back then, the narrative change took about a couple of years, whereas the digital transformation, it's like a tsunami. It's different and it's affecting every aspect of life. So I was very much seeing that there was an ambition by very senior leaders like CEOs and chief financial officers, etc., to give budget to do this because each large operation wants to be seen as a digital leader, as a case study for the innovation they're able to do. They want to be seen to be leaders. But there was, even though I would talk to them about this isn't change control like we've seen change control, there isn't just a small little narrative you have to give to the staff to say, before you were doing this and tomorrow you'll be doing that, it'll be a bit different. It'll be the same but different. This was a narrative it's before you were doing this, but now we're expecting a different kind of behavior in the workplace. And yet the senior leaderships weren't behaving any differently. So I was seeing this impact of automation and of AI and of new tools that were coming into the workplace that were drastically changing the hierarchy first. The automation was taking out the automation can take out a middle management. So it's pushing the hierarchy. And there was a different conversation happening. So people were sort of saying, if you take away all the operational things I'm going to be doing, what will I be doing? Senior managers are there going, oh, well, you'll be doing advanced problem solving. You'll be doing innovation. You'll be doing, we'll have all the space to do the things we've never had time to do. And these are people who never signed up to be doing that. They came in to do their job. Lots love doing their job. A lot want to do other things or develop the job. But the conversation isn't about what are you going to be doing. It's how are we going to work together? Because if the hierarchy breaks down, everybody's a peer. So different people are becoming different types of leaders. There's more of a social leadership now in workplaces than there ever was before. And the people, when you get into that social leadership, they're the people who have embraced the tools and are well able to work with the tools. And they may be more now competent than the people who are technically leading them. So it's a very strange conversation. And the senior leadership weren't seeing the need to do this. They were just saying, well, we've always done change control. You just use the change control system as always. So I kind of, no matter what I was saying, that wasn't being heard. And it wasn't a big recognition of we're not 100% in control of this change. The senior leadership aren't in control of the change because some of the external influences are causing the shift to AI and to other automation tools. So it's this kind of thing of you really need to be owning it. You need to be governing what you're actually using. You need to be understanding what people are doing. You're using catchphrases like we're going to be doing data-driven decision making. do you actually know your data? Do you have a data policy? So I was seeing all sorts of conversations that weren't happening, weren't willing to happen. And I just decided that I would try to I would try to step out and work with people to actually show that if you gain your agency in the world, you can start taking ownership and you can now create a new model of working that is based on relationships and peer-to-peer networking, peer-to-peer partnerships that actually address your full ecosystem, that aren't just siloed and narrow, because our world is open and we need to be creating the relationships with everybody in our ecosystem. So I said I would step out and look for people and look for companies and look for enterprises that are ready to have the conversations and are ready to move forward. That's a very long answer for your question. Sorry about that.
No, not at all. It's fascinating to hear how your journey has taken you up to where you are now with the Who Me. So a bit about that is about the work you're doing right now through the Who Me. What does it mean now for you to help leaders become more human in the digital world now that we have more tools and software at our disposal? And how do you define human differentiators and why are they so vital right now?
Yeah, firstly, if we look at our human differentiators, AI can do a lot of very functional work. And in our history and through our schooling, we would have come up to be schooled to be in a workplace where we do the functional work. So I often use this analogy as years ago when the first industrial revolution came along, they set up the industrial schools, and that was to provide a workforce to support the industrial activities. And if we look back to that time, the people who were educated would have been the people who were the politicians, but their education wasn't necessarily going to school to learn how to do maths and logical, functional things. Their education was being exposed to culture, to arts, to music, to this opening of the mind, to communicating, to travel, to experience. So it was a very experiential environment that created education. And we're sort of at that crossroads now because a lot of what we call education today would have been what was schooling then. So you learned to be a productive worker in the workplace. But what we're seeing now is that different levels of automation and different tools can replace that. But what we're needing now are the human differentiators so that the things we do, so it's that movement from the left brain, which is logic and rational and one-dimensional problem solving, let's say, to the right-hand side of the brain, which is the creative brain, in which we foster emotions, critical thinking, we communicate, we've innovation, we've creativity, we've advanced problem solving. So it's all of that different side of the brain, which only a small part of is nurtured in our schools. So we're in a place now, like we do have schools, obviously art colleges and things like that. And more that is becoming, we're seeing that everybody doesn't learn in that rational way. You know, we see in lots of areas we have special schools to help people who learn differently. They're fully capable of learning, but they don't learn in the 80% of the way that people learn or 60% of the way people learn. So, and we also learn through different ways. Like I can pick up a book and read it and take a lot out of it. Somebody else might read the same book and pick nothing out of it. But if they painted a picture or played with Lego, they might learn something. So we all learn differently. And it's that kind of recognition of the nuances and all the, we have knowledge, and that comes from the sort of rational brain, etc., and our absorption of data. But it's the I often say so people say knowledge is power. And I'd say, well, no, knowledge is data. Power is the wisdom to use the knowledge in the correct context. It's to understand the context. So it's that kind of, that's the difference where we're at today. We need to move out of expecting everybody just to be prepared for the workplace. That workplace is going to be gone very soon because we'll be expecting other things from the workplace, which are based on partnerships, relationships, trust, the ability to communicate, the ability to collaborate, and they're the human differentiators that we need moving forward. So it's that. So when you've been in a hierarchical workplace, if you've been the top person, you've been looking down and directing down. Whereas now, when that disappears, you have to turn around and change your narrative to say, now we speak as, I'm going to say, equals. You will have, now, I have a title called CEO, but I'm equal to you because you have more knowledge, because you know how to use the tools. So it's that kind of thing, because if you go to somebody who you have never valued an idea from, how are they going to trust you when you come and say, oh, tell me what you think. I really value your thing. And you say, well, for 40 years you haven't valued me. Why do I believe you now? So this whole thing of building trust is a massive thing going forward. And we all know this spark, like the spark from you and I is different from me working alone. So it's all based around now building communities and building relationships that are going to give us the innovation to be able to move forward. And we're also potentially looking at a world where not everybody will have work. So how do we create communities? And this is sort of out of the workplace, but how do we create communities of people who will be purposeful and feel included if they don't have a professional identity? That has been a huge part of people's life to date. So if you don't have that, how are you going to feel valued in your community? So there's responsibilities everywhere around coming out of this. And there are new narratives that are absolutely necessary.
And it's so true. Like we're adapting, we're learning more. And as you say in your own work, it's kind of keeping that human element in the digital age as well, but it's also using the communities and the metal parts of the community as well to help us to be human, but able to work with a digital world, but we also creating work as well that doesn't always have to be digital.
Yes. Yeah, like I feel there's a mass, and I hear lots of people saying, oh, wellness and not mental health, but wellness, the wellness community. There is a massive, I think, growth going to come in that there'll be one population of workers, I think, who will be extremely innovative, extremely highly paid because they will be driving how the technology goes forward. But I think the people who will be, doing the 40-hour weeks, the really impressive work, there's going to be a huge industry of how do we keep the working people working well? So there's a wellness support there. And then how do we keep the people who are not working living well? So you've got this whole thing of wellness is going to become a massive thing. And you can already hear the narratives about the health. How do we keep people out of hospitals, out of being sick, if they're going to be living long lives? So wellness and wellness support is going to be a massive growth area over the coming years. And that's lots of people would have said in the past, oh, that's not a career, that's a hobby, or that's what women do to go for their pin money. But I think it's going to become such an essential part because we need to keep a very well workforce, but a very well humankind. So we all need to become very cognizant. So I think there's going to be huge growth in those kind of wellness areas. There's going to be huge growth in caring. There's going to be huge growth in like education is a funny one because I think we're going to go to a case where we're like the model we have now, like in Ireland, the Leaving Cert doesn't really serve the people. It's the most stressful exam. And certainly we need to be educating people. It's we now education doesn't end now in this world we're going into. We're going to be constantly on growth paths. We're going to be growing to the next phase of what we need and evolving always. So education, which in my time would have been a finite thing, you went to your leaving cert or you went to your degree or you went to your master's, but then you worked. But now it's something that's needed constantly through it. So there's going to be a big shift in how education is delivered, how it's nurtured, how growth is happening, how development is. So there's going to be all sorts of different things that we're seeing coming along. Some of it will come online, but some of it will still be directed by people. So there's lots of interesting things coming and more emphasis on things that may have been seen as not so important previously.
And I suppose, Marie-Louise, where's the line between tech empowering us and tech overwhelming us? How do we find the balance?
I very much think there's a few responsibilities in this. We need all governments to be setting up legislation to say what's not acceptable. Last week I saw an article on that one of Elon Musk's company has released an AI companion for 12, the minimum age is a 12-year-old for dating, teenagers dating. Now, I would think there should be every government in the world saying absolutely not going to be released in my area. So we need to be having this kind of cognizance and having the conversations where we say, okay, I'll accept that. That is a benefit. And knowing what is an actual benefit to people and knowing says absolutely not. But it's again responsibility. So there's a level that our government should be working at to say, here are the no step over lines, the non-negotiables. These don't happen. These are not readily accessible. So there should be that going on. Then there's the whole parental responsibility, where parents are turning around and saying, okay, I'm seeing now we have a generation who are just always texting. I'm not going to, where do we put the line of when do we give the child the phone, or when do we give them the iPad that they're on YouTube from when they're 3, if you know what I mean? So there's that line of your own. You have a responsibility in this to sort of say, here's what I'm accepting. We do know that these things are addictive, so it is just like alcohol, drugs, blah blah. We need to be there going. We need to change this to say, okay, you can support us, but where's the line of it's now interfering with my life? So those kind of conversations are they're on the periphery now. People are waking up. I read an article last week. I read a good few articles last week, but I read an article saying Gen Zs are putting their phones aside. They're sort of saying it's destroying them. So that's very optimistic when you sort of say, okay, we're doing things a bit differently. And the more that happens, the better, because they're the next generation of parents. So if they start saying themselves, I'm not going to be like me or whoever, that's very optimistic. So you kind of go, you need to be able to say, these things offer me help. So I can go and say, Siri, tell me this, or whatever, tell me that, Alexa, tell me that. Yes, that's great. But I need to be able to put it aside and be able to sit down with my buddies and go for a coffee and have the banter, that's where we need to be able to be pushing people and being able to show what fun it is to have the banter. So yeah, it is that thing of knowing I'm using it for support, but it's not my life, and it's a fake life. It doesn't really have feelings. This AI companion is very interesting. There is a great place for it for people who are lonely. But then you've got to remember it's not real. And that's the very scary thing about it. And it's great to be able to say to somebody who's an older person, oh, we'll introduce you to an AI companion because they've lived a life. But if you start providing AI companions for children, even when you hear people saying, when a teacher's saying, I ask the children to list who's in their family, and they say Alexa, you just kind of go, okay, there's something wrong there that they consider the device that sits on the counter in the back of their kitchen is actually a family member. So that's the kind of thing where we need to look at and need to have the conversations for, no, they're not real. You can't touch them, feel them, and hug them. They're not real. So, like, you and I can discern that Alexa isn't real, but we need to be having those conversations with each generation coming up saying, yes, here's what you can benefit from these tools. But remember, a real feeling is a real feeling.
As you're talking there, again, images of the Hanna-Barbera cartoon, The Jetsons. And they have Rosie, she's like a maid, but she's a robot. And when I think of where we are today with technology, people have these robot hoovers, lawnmowers. They control them from an app in their phone. But I'm wondering, do you think tech is impacting our sense of self, and are we becoming too overly reliant on it and not allowing ourselves to be more human?
Well, as soon as you said the sense of self, I instantly thought of body shaming on Instagram and all of that, those trends that you see on TikTok, the things like inspiration, which are so damaging to people. And so this isn't really AI, but it's been a problem since we got into social media big time, is these fake aspirational lifestyles that so many people buy into. And you just kind of go, and the extreme is that you see the extremes of it when some of these Z-list celebrities, they do so much Botox or whatever cosmetic surgery on the face, and they begin to look bizarre. And we kind of think, really? Is that where we're at? So there's a huge amount that I think we need to be really careful about, because, or how much we're exposing people to, because that veneer of life, that social media life, is fake. It's not real. It's not, getting into the pajamas and furry socks at the end of the evening and going to bed. They do that. They wipe off the makeup. They have to do the same bodily functions that you and I have to do. You know what I mean? So that life is, so when you ask me about that kind of real life and sense of self, I hate that sense of self when it's tied into that social media and comparison and that measuring against. And I think one of the workplace is just a kind of bit weird, but one of the workplace habits that came out is that measuring productivity. Are you good enough? So that kind of measuring thing has been really endorsed in business for the last 10 or 15 years. And I think that's spilled over to everybody measuring against everybody else. But we need to get back to what's special about me and what I bring to the table. And, valuing and acknowledging the uniqueness of everybody. Like, if you're in a workplace and something has been overly productive and something's worked really well, it's going in and sort of saying, you did a really good job by fixing this widget, or whatever your contribution, to understand what the person is bringing, which is their unique self. And knowing that sense of self is individual to each self, not that generic. You have to look like this to be successful. You have to speak like this to be blah blah. You have to be this or that to be successful. So I think if we can get back to valuing what we're each contributing, it will really rebuild our senses of self and take us away from that measuring against. And the workplace is in a devil for measuring against.
And Marie-Louise, how does emotional intelligence help us to navigate the tech-heavy lives that we now find ourselves in?
Good question. Yeah, it's funny because I would say the world has been, since about 2012, 13, the work world, maybe more so in the industrial area that I was in, the work world was talking about, you know, automation and all of those kind of things. But in parallel, it was the first time I kind of heard the words emotional intelligence. We didn't need it in the workplace when we were managing food, but now that you're managing across and you're trying to build relationships, you absolutely need emotional intelligence. And I think one of the keys to emotional intelligence is the whole thing of being self-aware and able to self-regulate. So you need to be cognizant of what you're doing and the impact it's having on people around you. So it's this thing of, I can't say the same words to everybody because everybody doesn't have the same ears. So I need to be constantly aware of how I'm saying something, how what I'm putting out is being received, and adapting to ensure it's being received in the correct sense. And before there was no need for that because we were all so busy in the functional. But now when we're asking people to lean into their creativity, into their artistic, into building relationships, into collaborating, you absolutely need to know what your impact is and ensure that you're making the correct impact on the correct people. So I'm not saying being like a chameleon. I'm saying you need to understand that if I say something to you, you might hear it in one way. I might have to rephrase it or reframe it so that the essence is still the same, but you hear what I intend to say. So it's having that self-awareness and the ability to regulate and the ability to understand your impact. So it's absolutely critical if you're going to have harmonious workplace or a workplace that will be able to make progress.
And how do you protect the human touch in your work or daily life?
I think again, it goes back to valuing. It's again being aware of what's going on around you and recognizing and valuing what people are bringing. Like as Irish people, we're great ones for just getting on with it and sort of saying, "Oh, come on, look, come on, lads, and what's next?" We don't celebrate the wins in a way, and we don't turn around and say, "Okay, what worked well at this?" Even doing a return of experience and recognizing the contributions that people are making is a great way of ensuring the human touch is there, and a great way of encouraging people to continue valuing that human touch. So it is that thing of recognizing what's going on. Like it was funny today, I was coaching a particular person this morning, and they were talking about how much time they spent ensuring that the team could work well. And this she used the words, they were a very empowered team, and she was going on a particular leave, and she was there going, they were a very empowered team, and the replacement that was being lined up was a micromanager. And she had a conversation saying, I'm not sure this is going to work. The team only need a light touch because they all know what they're doing. They're all responsible. They're all taking ownership. They're all blah, blah. So she described a very empowered team. And then this micromanager was being thrown in. And she said, I think that's going to be a bit like a landmine, like not sure that's going to work well. Then when she was in her leave, she got a phone call from her boss saying, um, so many of the team had left. And he said, you didn't line up the right person. She was like, well, I did. I told you this wouldn't work. It's that um, undermining or constantly checking people is not productive, but valuing what they're being and giving them the space to be their best selves, clearing barriers so they can be their best selves, is a great way of ensuring you continue to have the human touch, because people will collaborate where they feel valued. They'll give opinions where they feel valued. They'll contribute if they feel it's in an open, and if I go in and I start saying, well, I did it all, and you had been a major player of it, you're going to be a bit cheesed off with me. So it's that ensuring you have value in the workplace and you're valuing the space and creating the space for people to actually shine.
And on that, Marie-Louise, you're currently helping leaders become more self-aware, confident and empowered. What practices have helped you on your own path of self-leadership?
Well, checking in with myself a lot, being through living what I'm saying. If I'm working with somebody and like obviously when you're coaching, it's opening them up. But if I'm not genuine with myself, I can't do it. I do quite a bit of checking in with myself now to ensure that I'm I'm holding myself accountable to be the best version of myself I can be for somebody else. Grounding myself, taking time, leaving enough space between meetings so that I actually can be ready for somebody and then can have the space to be available for them. And then having the space myself to understand that this is their job. Again, I go for a walk every morning, at least an hour and a bit, so that I clear my head before I start any day. I always make sure if I'm meeting with somebody and I'm doing exercise with somebody or I'm doing coaching sessions with somebody, that I actually have a grounding beforehand. So I always there 10, 15 minutes beforehand so that I can empty my head of my stuff and no distractions when I'm with them. No phones, no blah, 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 blah. None of the tech in the room so that we're there as humans doing what humans do best, connecting. And then I rush out to have a little look at my phone to see what I missed. No, I'm joking.
And Marie-Louise, was there ever a moment where you doubted your decision to leave the corporate world behind, and what helped you stay the course?
I suppose, well, the corporate world, as I said at the beginning, I was kind of an accidental tourist in it. So I must admit, I, and it goes back to something I was saying about growth. Every 2 years, I kind of got a new responsibility. There was something new to chase after. There was something new to, there was a new shiny toy every 2 years. So it was great. I was never bored. So that kept me in it. And I suppose as well, I kind of liked the fact I was allowed to really grow. Nothing was, there wasn't a barrier that I couldn't overcome in it. And I came up in a time when typically women weren't leaders. So I enjoyed that being a voice for other people. At times it was for women, but at times it was for men. And I liked that kind of thing that I was all, I never lost my human side in my computer work. And it was funny because when I was leaving, I said to everybody, now I'm going to do something much more human. I was never very good at the tech anyway. And people were laughing at me because I was really sort of knocking myself a bit. And a load of people came up to me afterwards and sort of said, you were always the human one. We always went to you with our problems. We never came to you with our laptops. We knew you, the team around you for the laptops or to fix the tech. We always sat in your office to talk about it and to figure it out and to have the curiosity. So even though it sounds like going from black to white or white to black, in actual fact, it was just another evolution of myself. And I often say to my own children, to some people, they see me as the senior manager. Other people see me as the computer manager. Other people see me as the woman who plays bridge on a such and such a night. You see me as mom. Somebody else sees me as somebody who goes for a walk every morning. I'm all of those things. We are all of those things. And that's the beauty of the future, because the world of work has made us believe we're one thing for 8 hours a day and another thing for the rest of the day. And it's quite black and white, or you're a bank manager, you're a doctor, so it gives you an identity, and that's great. And that's fabulous because it's great. But we're so much more than that one thing. And that's the thing of the future. We just mightn't have 40 hours of a week to be that one thing anymore. It mightn't be structured in the way, but we're lots of everythings. And we're now having the opportunity to reinvent ourselves. Gig economy, if you like playing the guitar, play the guitar in wherever for 3 hours a night on such and such a night. And then you might grow in a vegetable garden, or you might run a sports centre, or you might be a fractional strategist with somebody. We're all so much more than that one thing that we're called our career before.
And on that note, what excites you most about the future of work and the role people like you are playing in shaping it? And if someone listening is in a job that no longer feels aligned, what's one small step they can take to reconnect with their purpose?
Well, I'm seeing, to be brutally honest, I'm seeing an awful lot of women, more so than men, stepping away and sort of saying, that's not really suiting me anymore. I've tried it. I've had that t-shirt on for 20 years, 30 years, whatever, and really done with it now. So for me, that's really, I'm seeing a huge amount of optimism. They're willing to try something else, and they're willing to create something that's suiting them. I do see that a lot of the extremely big companies will find it very difficult to affect the organizational change in a quick enough timeline to, in 3, 5 years' time, it might be to try and change 40,000 people that's a really big ask. So I'm not really sure how that's going to play out. I think some of those big organizations are going to have to come down to smaller organizations to be able to build up, because I think a lot of this will grow from the grassroots up. Um, Smaller companies small to medium sized companies are the ones that I find very exciting, because they're asking the questions, and the senior leaderships that are there at the moment have enough scope, and it's not too outrageously big a task to get people on board with them. So I think those small to medium businesses are going to set models that larger businesses will try to replicate in their change. And I do think some of the very big players will collapse in all of this, but that's a different conversation altogether. But I do think there are a lot is happening at grassroots, and a lot is happening on the ground, and a lot is happening in small and medium more than in big, I believe. So yeah, I'm quite optimistic, and there is certainly a huge amount of way to change how management communicate with their teams, and they need to know that equal is the word going forward. It's not hierarchy, it's peer to peer, it's collaboration, it's communication, it's creating community, it's creating alliances. And it's not just internally, it's with your suppliers, your customers, your whole supply chain, your neighbors, your everything. It's all an ecosystem, and we need to support each other in it.
And when you look back now, what are you most proud of in this chapter of your life? And finally, I love to ask, what does the empowered self mean to you?
I suppose now I'm trying to be my authentic self. Something, as I sort of said, I came up in a time when women were typically in leadership. So during my career, I had to bend a lot to fit. So I've stopped bending for others. So what you see is what you get. So I'm really hoping that resonates with people and hoping people are seeing that for what it is. So I suppose if I'm not trying to be proud, but I suppose that's one thing that is definitely going to be part of me going forward. And what does being empowered mean in today's world? I think that people need to. I hear a lot of people saying, "Oh God, I'm never going to get with the AI. I really hate it. I really don't want to know anything about it." And I think the more you do that, the more disenfranchised you might feel. You don't have to use all the tools, but you need to be aware of what some of the big tools are doing. So you need to be aware of what the impacts of these tools are. And like I'm just saying, there was a report out last week that said that the big companies, so you're talking about things like HubSpot or Workday or SAP or Oracle or those big companies that sell the big solutions throughout the world and that most businesses use. So those big companies, it was saying that agentic AI will be part of all of those by 2028. Now that's only 3 years away. And I could guarantee you that I would walk out of this room and ask 10 people, what do you feel about agentic AI? And they look at me with cross eyes going, I don't know what you're talking about. And that kind of is scary in that it's so close. But the whole thing of agentic AI is they're agents, they're AI agents that are doing functional tasks. That's a very simplistic way. So, for example, you might have an agentic AI that does your invoice settling or your purchase order opening or something. So, a lot of the functions. But if I asked it as a question of agentic AI, people would go, I've no idea what you're talking about. And it's kind of think, okay, no, kind of try to come to terms with the terms, even AI companions to understand what they're doing. And then knowing, because people, I'd say in 5 years' time, AI companions are going to be so big. And you just need to know, well, in my family group or in my community group or my little ecosystem, am I going to be comfortable with people using AI companions? Or am I going to, like, if I had grandchildren, I might be having a real big conversation with my daughters or sons that say, consider this because the impacts of that. So to be empowered in this digital world, you need to know not necessarily the details of how things work, but you need to know the trends and know the impacts of the trends and be able to have a conversation with somebody and then let them make their decision. But it is, and let yourself make a decision of whether you want to use it. Because if I ended up living here on my own in a place where I didn't know anybody or I had to go somewhere, I might very much value an AI companion, for example. So it's having that awareness of there are things out there that can support me, but equally, if I don't use them in support, how can they be used? And can I have those conversations with people to sort of say, have you considered this? So that's what I think empowerment it would be like. It's very much just trying to be aware of what is actually out there and how it can be used for good and for not so good.
And Marie-Louise, thank you so much for your insight, honesty, and your vision today. I really appreciate you coming on board with the podcast. Your story is such a powerful reminder that we don't have to abandon the systems we come from, but we can choose to do it differently, to lead differently, and to live more human lives in an increasingly digital world. And if you would like to connect with Marie-Louise or learn more about Who Me, all the details are in the show notes. And if today's episode sparked something for you, I would love if you share it with a friend or leave a review. We're building a community of soulful, courageous leaders right here, and every voice counts. I'll see you next Wednesday for another episode of the Empowered Self podcast. Until then, stay curious, stay kind, and as Marie-Louise saying, stay human.
Thanks a million, Crystal.